Hello there, my friends.
Oh, hello there, EEARTS. We don't have anybody in yet, but that's okay. I know you guys are going to climb in.
Well, that's because they changed it so that you can no longer, if you use this system, which is the new YouTube Studio, you can't put a time delay in. They took it out. It used to be right there that you could set up a time that you want to go for. So lately I was going through classic streaming where you could put in a time delay and say, go for 7 p.m. Eastern or 9 p.m. Eastern, whatever it is. And now they made it so when you go to use the classic, it takes you to learn more about the new live, streaming at YouTube Studio. So, they get you going in loops. It's all part of the control grid.
It is. So they play their games, and we sort of kind of have to play back. It's it's cat and mouse. It's part of it, and one day we won't have to play these games anymore. But while we still can, we want to teach you guys as much as we possibly can to have your hearts be open and your minds explore and be kind of like in a wondrous state, like a little child. We want everybody to feel safe to explore like that.
Yeah, most definitely. So I hope everybody is having a good day out there, and hopefully people will be able to see this and start to join us. And in the meantime, we'll go over some things that we're going to talk about here. And Dan's in the house. There you go. Synchronicity. Where am I? Wow. Synchronicity is a wonderful thing when we're really following the path that we're supposed to be on. Then it starts to just pop up. One synchronicity after another. The more synchronicities you see, the more you know you're on the right path.
Mm-hmm. You do, and sometimes you might have to look a little bit, but that's okay. That's not a problem. We all have to look around to see if we're on the right path and make the decisions that we feel are best for us, and it's different for everybody. So, and we all have different synchronicities. So, and there's Kermit the Frog. Hello, hello, hello. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see everybody, and we had a busy day today with quite a few people that we were working on and with, and it's wonderful to see people progressing and growing. And this is, the times of greatest travail and trial are the times of greatest opportunity. Mm-hmm. Would you not agree?
Oh, I totally agree. And like necessity is the mother of all invention, and we're all finding out that we're going to be needing different things in different ways, and we're going to figure out new ways to get that.
Exactly. And one of the things that's wonderful is like after yesterday's live, reading some comments, there was one person that was obviously just used to following one tradition all their life. And they made a comment that, they've never been exposed to it or heard of any of these things, and they were taught to, stay away from meditation because it's evil, and it's wonderful to open minds. Opening minds is so important in this time. And we are really kind of running against the clock as far as like how many people's minds can we open before the world, devolves into even more chaos and destruction.
Right. And we do want people to, like, I was so afraid to explore different traditions, different religions. I used to go to church, and I was like the best church mom I could possibly be, but something inside of me always was nagging, saying, this isn't right. There's something not right about this. And I always felt guilty because, gosh, I sure liked astrology. Gosh, I sure like to read my horoscope. Goodness sake, I love those tarot cards. And, I just felt guilty. And I don't want, since I've freed myself, I'm a different person. And I want you guys to be able to be free too.
Okay, so Ahimsa has always hit me as one of the most important things we could try to practice. And for those of you that don't know, Ahimsa comes out of the Hindu, Buddhist, and Jain traditions. The principle of nonviolence towards all living things, the single most important moral discipline. Now, if we truly are following Ahimsa, then karma and the law of cause and effect is not going to be such a negative thing to us. It's going to allow us to evolve upwards, to go upwards spiritually and go into the higher dimensions. It'll help with the practice of ascension. And, this practice is really, I view it as the biggest key that there is. So just to give you an idea, like if you look at the Old Testament, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, that's not ahimsa, not at all. And you remember Christ saying, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But he taught, turn the other cheek. And when Peter pulled out his sword to fight the Romans that were going to come and take him, he said, lay down your sword. Right now, we are being tempted in this world to most definitely not practice ahimsa. We're being riled up and we're being herded into two different camps, march towards each other, at the same time marching off the end of a cliff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true, and they are getting us in a really bad state of mind. They're putting our souls at risk, for not being able to ascend. They're putting us at risk by keeping us in such a low vibration where we're always looking outside of ourselves, wondering what's going to happen next, and expecting our leaders to have some control or come to the rescue or do something about this. And it's more of a bottom-up, top-down thing where things get so bad, other people come in and say, hey, you have to do something about this. You have to do something about this. So they're right there with their solution. It's an oldie but a goodie. It's a nasty trick that they do.
So for those of you guys that caught yesterday's live, and we had tons of issues getting it out, technical issues, thank you powers that be, we talked about Jiva, Jiva, Jiva. And so the Jiva in these Eastern traditions is the eternal soul. Basically, that's what it is. It's that part of us which is immortal and does not perish. However, our actions, whether we call them karma, karmic law, law of cause and effect, in the Western world, you would view it as judgment from God. But any way you look at it, what we put out into the world will end up coming back to us in one way, shape, or form. Not always in this life. So sometimes, we've wondered, why do tragedies happen to certain people? And like I've shared with you guys, if you've been around for a while, I had a brother that was 11 years older than me. And at 5 years old, he was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And they operated to get it out. And they weren't totally successful. He lived till he was 16 before he passed on. He had a lot of trials and tribulations, so did my parents, because of it. And both of my parents were, they were never rich. Neither of them ever made more than like $20,000 in their entire life. Yet they did whatever they could. And, the bills and everything were overwhelming for the medical, needs and all. So, things like that where you say, well, why would a 5-year-old deserve something like that to happen to him? Or even other things, that can occur even to infants, And, in the Eastern world, a lot of it is thought of as potentially, possibly past life karma. But also, there are some beings that will come in to the world in order to perhaps pay off past life karma by doing a sacrificial act in this life. And maybe not even paying off karma, just simply acting more in lines with being more of a saint, really, because they know that their actions may trigger something much greater later on. So a lot of times things in this world don't look like they make any sense. And obviously, with the chaos we have around the world, if you're in the matrix and in the system, you're not getting the bigger picture, that this is a manufactured series of events with a purpose. And the way out of this is really to practice ahimsa. Now, doesn't mean that in a life or death situation, you wouldn't practice self-defense. And there's whole self-defense systems that come from this type of concept where you don't want to really do so much harm, such as Aikido, which was created by Morei Ueshiba, where you use your enemies, and you really shouldn't have any enemies. When you hold peace and love in your heart, you understand that people are enveloped in darkness and in misunderstanding, and sometimes they will commit atrocious acts, as we see a ton of those going on right now. But in other words, instead of being an aggressive attack, you use the energy of the other person against themselves and just flow with it. Tai Chi has a lot of the same practical applications as well. And it's all about trying to do, as little harm as possible. So in Jainism, Ahimsa is the standard by which all actions are judged. For a householder observing the small vows, the practice of Ahimsa requires that one not kill any animal life. So thus they are vegetarian. However, for an ascetic, which is somebody that we could view as going all the way, kind of like a monk, or something along those lines, where one withdraws from society and is completely dedicated to the spiritual side of things. Ahimsa entails the greatest care to prevent the ascetic from knowingly or unknowingly being the cause of injury to any living soul, again, a jiva. Thus, Ahimsa applies not only to the human being and to large animals, but also insects, plants, and microbes even. The interruption of another jiva, another eternal soul's spiritual progress, causes one to incur karma, the law of cause and effect, and the accumulated effects of past actions conceived by Jains as a fine particulate substance that accretes upon the jiva, keeping one mired in what we call samsara, which is the cycle of rebirth into more mundane earthly existence. So not only physical violence, but also violence or even negative thoughts result in the attraction of karma. So that's interesting because, Christ said too, I tell you, you haven't just sinned if you go and, actively try to seduce your neighbor's wife. But even if you've thought about it in your mind, you have sinned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which puts a bunch of us in a pickle, because what they've done to us in society is they've made us, they've created these traumatizing situations, and people who do have PTSD, if they come upon a situation that's a triggering situation, their mind automatically goes to this negative aspect of things, and it's not their fault. So what they've done in society is done very much by design. So it's very, very important that when we recognize we have these bad thought patterns, that we start to kind of fix them as best we can and force ourselves into a positive thought pattern, because it matters. It makes a difference what we think. If we're, whatever it is, negative, deceitful, things like that, it matters.
NGC 6543 said that, let me get that, see if I could get up there again. Here we go. The people elect the people, therefore the people are in charge. Yeah, they give us to give our power away is what they do. Because, if Party A is controlled by some certain group of controllers and Party B is too, and your only choices are A and B, then casting a vote to either side is saying that I accept this karma that's coming my way. So we have to be very careful, and we have to look at this, for what it is. And it's good to see all you guys. Good to see you, Larry and Crystal, Core Art, Christine, Mark J. Wonderful to see all you beautiful people. So they understand this. As we were saying before, they understand everything that's going on. They understand how the pineal gland works. They understand how Kundalini works. That's why they've given us religious traditions that are teaching us that Kundalini is a demon. Because they don't want us having a opened third eye. They don't want us increasing our perceptive abilities. As Cindy was saying the other day, there's FBI and CIA studies that have been declassified that show that as more cosmic rays come in, which, that's what's happening right now, guys, our psychic abilities are going to increase. Our intuition's going to increase. They know this. They did studies about this for 30, 40, 50 years ago. Now, Tibet is a very, very interesting place. And, I've always been drawn to it, as well as Nepal. Very, very spiritually orientated. And right now what's going on with China controlling Tibet is just a travesty. It's horrible.
Yeah, it really is. And it's like they take these places that are sacred and they kind of twist them around and turn them upside down, because I feel they know that these places can bring people to a place of freedom. Their soul can actually be free. And here in the West, we've been under a state of mind that we have to follow this one book or this one person, and if you don't, you're going to burn in hell. And that's because they don't want our souls free. If our souls become free, they no longer have control, because we'll start to realize what we can do with a free soul and a pure heart.
So the Tibetan people have suffered so gravely and have been so oppressed. And again, I don't think there is a people besides perhaps indigenous people around the globe in general that have spent more time in deep meditation. And also in the case of Tibet, they've actually documented, what they have found deep, deep, deep in meditation. We look at today's science, and if you ask the scientists, what's the ultimate frontier? They might say, well, traveling to other stars, traveling maybe even to other galaxies. Or they might say something like going within the body, and learning all the things we've learned about the atomic structure of things, quantum physics showing us that none of this is really exactly real in the sense of what we think. Because until the observer observes, it's just potentiality. But in Tibet and in other places with a very, very high spirituality, they've discovered a lot of the mysteries of the universe by going within. And so you're looking at, on the left and the right, pictures of the same being. And so on the left is him normal in life, and on the right is when he's acquired the rainbow body. And so ascension is possible in one lifetime. And there have been tens of thousands of Tibetan monks that have achieved it. And they have achieved the ability to willfully speed up and change their vibration and go to another dimension. They have fully activated their light bodies, their Merkabas. And they're not limited to time and space anymore, because when your Merkaba is activated, you're a multidimensional person. All you have to do is think about where you want to go, and you'll be there. It's just like having access to a wormhole anytime you want.
Yeah, and some people already have it and they don't know they have it, and it's a little bit difficult to control. But it can be traumatizing if you use it in the wrong way and you're pulled out of your body, because it does feel very much like you're dying. And if you do that once and it feels like you're dying, automatically our ego is going to say, hey, I don't want to die. I don't want to do this anymore. So it's something that you can practice using baby steps, super small baby steps. One really good way I feel is to learn how to do lucid dreaming, because that kind of puts you in a safe place to be out of body where you have control.
So, some questions there. By Will saying, he's like translucent. Well, yeah, he's changing. He's going upwards in vibration. He's moving into another dimension. And so the dimension we find ourselves in here is very, very heavy, solid, and thick. When you are meditating, like right now, my feet are buzzing like crazy. I'm just used to it. My lower spine is buzzing. I can feel the crown chakra tingling. That's just how I feel 24/7, 365. It's a sign of the energy body really growing and evolving and changing. Sometimes they will be there and then they'll be gone and there's nothing left. They're just gone. Sometimes their body will slowly shrink, and over a period of time, it might end up being about 18 inches long and weighing a couple pounds. Other times there's nothing left but just hair and finger and toenails. They're just gone. They have control. They've learned how to control the dying process as well, so that they can just transition when it's time. And that's not just in this tradition. It's really, really common in yoga and in Hinduism as well. Many yogis have had that ability, and even the ability to bilocate. In Yogananda's book, An Autobiography of a Yogi, when Sri Yukteswar, his guru, his teacher, is about to get ready to go onto the other side. Yogananda's like 100 miles away, and in those days he walked it for the most part. Maybe horse and carriage too, so it'd take a little while. So his teacher, bilocated, appeared totally physically, solid, but yet it was a copy of his body that he used from the ether. He could manifest it. There have been many cases of amazing abilities by these beings, being able to levitate, being able to actually manufacture food, just bring food out of thin air, out of the ether. And in fact, that's what we're going to do when we are fully ascended. We won't really have to eat anymore. And even now, there's cases of people that can just live off of the sun's prana, the life force that comes off the sun. And, Cindy and I, we've gotten really used to eating, for the most part, once a day, which we just had an amazing lentil curry, madras curry. Man, that was good. But that's all we really need. And we find that we don't even need to eat, probably not even on a daily basis, really. And that's part of the ascension process. So many of you guys, when we were talking about this yesterday, were saying, I'm not eating like I used to, or I used to eat a lot of meat and I just can't do it anymore. It just is not appealing anymore, or I just don't seem to need it. And the other thing is we'll need less sleep at times. Other times we'll need a ton more sleep right now. Because right now we're changing. Our whole body structure is changing. We're evolving.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the biggest things that's changing is our heart chakra. And I don't know how many of you have more heart palpitations or issues here or there, but I do feel strongly that the heart chakra is gaining momentum, and it's going to be like the basis of how we communicate with one another. So a lot of people's heart chakras have been pretty damaged through life, and they've been hurt pretty bad. And again, I feel like that's something done by design too. So we can't work through our heart chakra, or maybe we're afraid to because we don't want to be taken advantage of or lied to or, made a fool of, because it's just been so traumatizing over the years to try to live in this society. It's not built for empaths at all. But again, it's just another thing done by design, and it's another reason why we should work on helping to clear out our heart chakra so we can listen clearly and understand the vibrations that are coming in without feeling guarded.
Now, it's interesting how Tibetan Buddhism developed, because it really pulled from Buddhist traditions in both India, where it was originated, and then also in China. And so originally, it wasn't the dominant religion there. And Buddha was here on Earth about 2,500 years ago, just to give you an idea, about 500 years before Christ. And actually, it was amazing because there were so many brilliant minds that came into the world in that time frame, about 600 BC. We have Confucius, we have Lao Tzu, we have Buddha, we have so many of the great Greek philosophers. Very interesting time period. And again, this points towards there being what we would call ascended masters, beings that have already achieved what we are just starting to get through. They've done this. They've been here, done that, but you know what? They have a heart big enough that they want to come back and help us do it too. So they're putting their hands out and they're trying to bring us up. Do you think that Jesus would criticize Buddha? Do you think that Buddha would criticize Jesus? No. Do you think they're on different teams? See, this is where we have to get by the division, and this is what the dark side does. Oh, only you are right. Yeah, everything else is wrong. Just your system's right. The little devil or demon whispering in your ear. So it's interesting because the Tibetans have always called their own country Bo, on some occasions adding Kwajin, which means land of snows. Their own recorded history dates back about 2,300 years or so, to the time of Macedonian Greek Empire in the West, and the Mauryan Empire in India, and the late Chao Empire in China. During Tibet's first 8 centuries, it was ruled by a military dynasty. They weren't always peaceful. In fact, they seem to have inherited the same system that we see in perhaps Sumeria, and perhaps in Egypt as well. So it wasn't always the case that they were peaceful. How did they get that way? Well, by the practice of Ahimsa. And the practice of Ahimsa over generation after generation, after hundreds of years, it led to a complete change in the way they viewed everything and what the people would allow. Because the people would no longer allow a military dictatorship. And it's really interesting, too, because, boy, they have the same legends echoing. So it had an animistic religious system run by a priesthood of shamans adept in divination, sorcery, and sacrifice. It's polity, centered on a royal family believed to have descended from the heavens. Oh, where do we hear that? Even in Tibet, again, we have that. Oh, well, kingship came from the heavens, descended from the heavens. In fact, the first 7 kings came down to earth to rule on a magical ladder, hanging in space, up from which they would return when their time had come to die. That sounds like Jacob's ladder, you know? Think about this. These legends are all the same. They are all the same. They point to the same things, the same entities, the same interference in human development. Due to some conflict in the palace, the 8th king cut the sky rope. And the kings thereafter, like the pharaohs of Egypt, were interred in large burial mounds, along with their possessions and their companions. And in Egypt, sometimes their companions were not, they weren't dead yet, till they were buried alive in there with them. Fascinating that we get the same story again. Isn't that interesting?
And it happens over and over and over. And what really helped me wake up is understand that, the Bible's not, these stories are not original. They're not, they don't stand on their own. They're across the globe. And more often than not, you're going to find how they mention things about outer space, ships, things that sound like really cool technology now that we understand more today than we did 20 years ago. We can say, hey, maybe this was a technology because look what we have here to parallel with that there. So, yeah, it's just really important to be able to feel safe, to open your mind to different belief systems, because you never know how far you can grow and unless you do open up to different things. That's really important.
So we are right now being drawn into a new world war. This is what they are trying to orchestrate. And they're also trying to create a civil war in this country. And so what they are doing is creating the circumstances for us to get into a negative karmic loop, to circumvent the ascension process for all that will fall into it, lower your vibration, and leave you basically just stuck in the mud, not going anywhere. There are so many souls that get damaged in war traumatically, and some of them end up becoming ghosts and hauntings and not moving forward, being caught in a bardo, caught in a, I was looking for that, like a purgatory, just sort of stuck in between. And the controllers know this, and that's why they are doing it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. They know that if they can keep our vibration at a certain place, that the cycle of having us come back and continue to work for them will remain for them. So they have an unlimited amount of souls to come back and work for them, so they can put us through an education that only entertains their industries, their companies, their businesses. It's like they only send us through school to make us out to be little batteries so that we can go and count their money at the bank, or run a register so that whenever somebody sells something, they get a little piece of that money. And it just goes on and on and on. And yeah, we got to figure this out and break out of it.
Exactly. So one of the questions was, how do we work without money? Well, barter and trade is one of the things, and just being as self-sufficient as we can be on our own as well. And then, just working with each other and coming to a set of agreements, hey, I'm pretty handy with fixing things. I noticed you need help with this, and this. And I also noticed, your garden looks really abundant. and work something out. As we were talking about in the Indus Valley, Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, these cultures, these people seem to be living in a very peaceful, unified way without any evidence of there being any war and weapons of war or anything like that. And as well, there were no kings. It didn't seem like there was a ruling class. It seemed like they were just getting along together without an elite class at all and a monetary system that's devised to control them. So things would be much fairer in that case, and they were much fairer and more peaceful at the same time. And this particular history, this culture, this civilization has been really swept under the rug because they don't want us knowing about these alternatives. But there are alternatives. And ultimately, again, we all have a jiva. We all have a spirit within us, a piece of source, a piece of God, prime creator, that makes us immortal. So we just go from one incarnation into another. And we do spend time on other planes of existence, seeing what we need to learn and what we need to grow with. Now, in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, when the person dies, they're basically judged by the weight of their heart, their soul. And if it's heavier than a feather, then you're going to be basically going through a purging. It's interesting to look at the different traditions. And so, biblically, we have a statement that comes from the Bible. It's appointed once to die and then the judgment. And that will make many people say, see, there's no reincarnation because, you once to die, then a judgment. Yeah, and then, then you go back and you do it over again. There's other biblical references to Enoch and Elijah coming again. And many take that to be John the Baptist and Jesus, that they actually were, Enoch and Elijah, or Elijah and Elisha as well. There's different thoughts on that, but there's a lot of biblical references to reincarnation. But you have to also recognize, as we said before, the Bible is 66 books, 66. And there was over 200 Gospels in circulation. There were thousands of different texts. And the ones that did not agree with what was going to be put forward as Constantine's version in order to keep an empire together and to control the people, they were all destroyed and burned. And after they were burned, if people followed the quote-unquote heresies, like you said, perhaps you thought, well, I liked these other books, and I know they were more Gnostic. They had more Gnostic tendencies. But I liked them. They just felt right to me. Well, if you kept talking about them and even would brand yourself as a Gnostic, then eventually it wasn't just the books being burned, it was you too.
Yeah, it was, So there's a whole lot of things that have happened in our past and our history that would instinctively make people afraid to explore, probably on like a DNA level too, depending on what kind of lifetimes or lives you've had going back, because these are pretty severe traumas that they put humans through. And just knowing that they did it to keep our vibration low so they can keep us reincarnating at the same spot, I think that's one of the keys to understanding, or even kind of fighting back and keeping and helping ourselves raise up to know that the dark side wants us to be involved in this chaos. They want us to be scared. They want us to be worried.
So the galactics, the guides, the message they've been giving us is that we need to stress to you guys to recognize that you're eternal beings and that your actions in these times are critical. So again, don't get pulled into it. Don't lower your vibrations. As we've talked about this, there have been all sorts of horrible things done throughout history. And, for instance, when we're talking about some of the persecutions, they boiled alive people because of being heretics. The Christian church, the Catholic church, literally boiled alive, drawn and quartering, tying people up to 4 horses and, smacking their butts so they go flying in each different direction. These are things that were done, quote unquote, in the name of God, but have nothing to do with God. nothing to do with source, nothing to do with ahimsa, nonviolence and love. But they were done as justifications in order to achieve a means to an end. But also, just the terrifying nature of it damages the soul. And that's what the darkest of the dark ones understand. So these beings are going to be so damaged that when they get to the other side, often they will be trapped and not be able to move forward, or they're just going to be at such a lower vibration that they're going to be drawn more into what we would call the lower astral realms. And that's where the hells and nasty places and nasty creatures are. And so we have to be very, very careful about that, not allow our vibration to get pulled down. And most definitely there are things like demonic possession. It really does go on. And a lot of these individuals that are going to allow themselves to get controlled by their hate, and commit acts of violence are going to be also easily manipulated by the dark ones. And, they'll do acts of atrocity, which we've seen happening in the streets of this country. And of course, in war, it's even up to another whole level. So it's so imperative to stay out of that. And we had talked about Armenia and Azerbaijan and what's going on there. So, they're recruiting people up to 55 years old to go and to take part in this. And, if you're a spiritual person, you're going to understand this is damaging to the soul. Do you know how many soldiers on the front lines and all, when it came down to it, had somebody in their sights and couldn't pull the trigger? A lot more than you would think.
Yeah, they did. And it's really sad that anybody had to be put in that position anyhow. But these are not our wars. The average person, the average human being does not want to be out there causing this chaos and this tragedy, and they just don't want to do it. If it were up to us, we would all just really seriously want to get along and be happy with one another.
So, we're getting very close to November, and once we get to right around Election Day, the likelihood is the timeline that we're on, it's going to get pretty crazy. So we have to prepare ourselves for that, and again, not get pulled into the drama, because that is what they want. They want us to take sides. And when we go into the Tibetan Book of the Dead, it's really the Tibetan book of living and dying. When you get down to it, living, dying, and living again. There are different realms. We've talked about things like the lower astral, and then the upper astral, which many would take to be the heavens. Which, in effect, there's actually much higher dimensions than that as well. But again, where we are vibrating at, where our resonance is at, because everything is energy. Think in terms of frequency, as being so important, as Tesla said. It's all about what you're vibrating at. Has nothing to do with your dogma. Because, you could have what you would envision as the perfect dogma. But if your heart is not in the right place and your actions are not in the right place, then you're not going to go to the place that you want to go when it's time to leave the body. Dogma is totally human. And yet, really what we're looking at is we're looking at our own personal vibration, holding love in the heart, holding a reverence towards all life. And even the dark ones that are so misguided, we should still hold compassion for them, because ultimately they're just creating their own hells.
They are, and it's really sad. I think that's really important when you do see someone who is in anguish or mentally upset, or if they're in turmoil, know that something had to have happened for them to be in that place, and they're not hurting for no reason. And one thing that's that I can understand is hurt people, and they honestly they don't mean to. So for us to hold compassion when we do see someone who seems to be missing the mark or in pain is the most important thing we can do for that person. Like how would you want to be treated if you knew you had these flaws and you were just getting by doing the very best you can? You would want people to have understanding.
The Tibetan attitude towards death and the between is neither mystical nor mysterious. The guidebook for the journey through the betweens show how the reality of death fits into the Tibetan's world, vividly picturing the continuity between former, present, and future lives. Their multi-life perspective is no more and no less a religious belief system than our modern sense of the structure of the solar system or of the pattern of the cycle of the seasons of the year. Tibetans considered it a matter of common sense and scientific fact that animate beings exist along a continuum of lives, and that the death, between, and rebirth processes follow a very predictable pattern. They have credible accounts by enlightened voyagers who have gone through the between experience consciously, preserving the memory and reported their experiences. Tibetans accept these reports of their psychonauts, just as we do those of astronauts, who report what happened on the moon, if you believe that we went to the moon, or out in space. Tibetans also believe that most people can recover memories of their former lives by a fairly elementary regime of meditation. Tibetans act on this Buddhist perspective in a practical manner, using their lifetimes to educate themselves, to understand the world, and prepare for death and future lives by improving their ethical actions, emotional habits, and critical insight. So they share the Western view of death in some ways, and in other ways they see it very differently. On a human level, they see it as we do, as a tragedy at the end of the life, to an extent. They have methods for anticipating and warding off untimely death, for cheating even timely death, and for prolonging the precious human life. On this human level, they are even more afraid of death than most modern materialists or humanists, who expect an automatic, painless oblivion. They see the anesthetic oblivion as very improbable, understanding death rather as a door to a transition. And that's what it is. One door opens, another closes. It's just a cycle. There is definitely repercussions for our actions, so we must always be thinking about that first and foremost.
That's right. There are. It is just so important to keep yourself in the highest vibration possible. And I see, Karma Doc, we had lots of people who had no notification. They've changed the thing on us, so I don't even think we can notify people anymore. But anyhow, thanks for your guys' support, and on every level, we truly, truly appreciate it.
I found it interesting too, because they talk about different classifications of beings, but ultimately, there's the jiva. It's ultimately it's the fact that we have an eternal soul, and really, being a human is not the lowest of the low by any means. And in some senses, according to the Tibetan practice, you're better off being a human in some ways than being a deva, or even, something of a higher realm in some ways, because we have the opportunity in this life to achieve liberation and enlightenment. And it all depends on how we act. So being a human is not all bad. It is definitely very challenging, though. Very, very challenging.
It is. And thank you so much, Spartano Negative. We really appreciate your guys' help, and all of you, if even just hit the thumbs up. We really appreciate it a lot.
And I have a PDF here that I'm going to share with you guys too. And I'm just rereading it. I think I read it maybe a decade ago, and probably read it like a decade before that too. But you end up reading so many different things, learning so many different things, and it all gets to be merged together. So I'm rereading it right now, and finding so many other things that have gotten to be so congruous with all the other things I've been delving into from all these other traditions. And that's why it's so valuable to go and learn about these other traditions. Like the last maybe 6-7 years, I've focused very, very deeply into Hinduism, whereas before that time period, that was one of the things I read the least. Although I remember first starting to study it when I was 20. And I was studying it from a Christian perspective because I was going to Bible study all the time. And thank you, NGC. We appreciate your support. You guys keep us going, because I was going to a Bible study several times a week and doing like an all-day Sunday thing. I've always been extremely spiritual, and so I always wanted to immerse myself completely in whatever I was doing. As I've shared with a lot of you guys in the past, I mean, I've gone to so many different denominations. I would say at least a couple dozen of different types of churches. Including even, things like Jews for Jesus, for instance, evangelical, Baptist, Catholic, Lutheran. I stayed at a Lutheran church for one of the longest stints, but also, so many others. And thank you, Brother Spartano. We appreciate you too. But then I've also, since I grew up in an area where most of my friends were Jewish, I've gone also and taken part in those practices, and was very used to Friday nights, having a Seder, and, I was just so used to all the traditions, and then have had friends that were Wiccan and taken part in Wiccan circles and pagan circles, you name it, have a ton of friends that are Sikhs as well. It just seemed to sort of develop. And it's a blessing to be able to take part in everybody's different traditions and really just sharing the love that underlies it all. That's really where it's at. Everything else is dressing in dogma. Ultimately, it's all about where is your heart vibrating at? What do you want to put out into the world? And so right now, when we're finding ourselves like 5 weeks away from potential tremendous chaos, it's really important that we prepare ourselves for that. And of course, always prepare with the obvious, food, water, supplies. Get ready to have to hunker down at home or get ready to be able to bug out. That's all practical, and you need to do that. But also, strengthen yourself spiritually. Now is the time for a great spiritual practice. Give time to you. Find out who you really are if you haven't gone in deep yet. And then kind of, as the Bible would say, gird your loins. Gird your loins, because you never know what's going to be coming and attacking us next.
Thank you so much, Will Saul. Appreciate it a lot, you guys' support. It's just overwhelming and wonderful. We really appreciate it. Yeah, in the upcoming times, it's so very important to prepare spiritually. Don't get sucked into the mainstream media or too much media for that matter. Know enough to explore your world and be curious about things, and understand enough so that if you're going outside, if you're going to be stepping into anything that's scary or yucky, so you can be prepared. But other than that, don't let the other media outlets pull your heart down, and don't let them make you feel like, there's nothing you can do, because the most important thing you can do, and it's one of the biggest kept secrets, is keep your vibration high.
Most definitely. And when we're going to be faced with things that are going to be perhaps really big decisions, and I, just talking about like some of our close friends right now, they're trying to make a decision. For instance, do I jeopardize my job because it looks like the world's falling apart? Thank you so much again, and GC, we appreciate it. Seriously, a lot of people are going to have to. This is where you have to go within and develop that intuition, and do it on a daily basis. More than the intuition, just being able to listen, clearing the mind to be able to listen, because there's going to be big decisions. You're going to be faced with big decisions. Like, we have friends again that are thinking about, well, it might be a good time to take a vacation the first week of November. And maybe I'll take a vacation somewhere where I'm far away from population centers and just see how things go. Whether you have friends and family out in the country somewhere, something like that, you might want to think about something like that, because what's coming is going to be very, very shocking, and it's going to change the world forever. This country's never going back after what's going to happen, when we get to election week. Ultimately, it's going to be one hell of a roller coaster ride, but we have to be as prepared as possible. And again, the spiritual side of things is so, so very important, because we are eternal souls having a human experience. This is temporary. So don't let any actions tarnish your spirit. As we were reading in the Buddhist tradition, negative actions, negative karma, it sticks to you, your essence, it sticks to you, your core, like sludge. And then that can pull you down. So it was very interesting, too, that there's different types of beings. We're all souls, but we can incarnate as different types of beings. And there are these beings that are very, very demonic, very, very dark. And what do they want? They want company. They want company. They're miserable. So even these elite that seem to have the world by the, cojones, they're still miserable in their core, because they know they're not being in service to others. Because when we're in service to others, we will start to lift ourselves up. When we're doing selfless acts, it doesn't mean that you have to give away everything. Though, the rich man's son that, said to Christ, I've been listening to you, I'm a follower, I believe in you. What can I do? He said, and Jesus said, well, if you want to go all the way, sell everything, give the money to the poor, and just follow me with what you have on your back. And that made him really depressed, because he had a lot of stuff and he knew he couldn't do it.
And, one of the more selfless things I feel that anyone could do is actually healing yourself, meditation, because it does help center you, and it fixes you in your surroundings so that you can better assist those around you or pick up on what they might need. It's just a really healthy way of expressing yourself, clearing your mind, making it so that you can just be a better person for those around you. That's really important. It's not a selfish act at all. I feel it's extremely selfless if you can sit and meditate, even just for a short time.
Yeah, it's so important. Get into a regular meditative practice that can end up maintaining your sanity in these times, without a doubt. These times are, we know, going to be very, very challenging. So I would encourage everybody to check out our meditation and QiGong playlist, and we'll definitely be adding more to that. I want to thank everybody that has been supporting us on Patreon and also through Ko-Fi. And if you need any help with anything, reach out to us. You could get us at evolutionaryenergyarts@gmail.com or EEARTS@protonmail.com. And we work completely on a donation basis, so we don't charge you. We leave it up to you, because we really want to walk the walk. That's just who we are.
Yeah, we do. We do want everybody to have an opportunity and an ability to be able to get a clearing or do what you need. And people have been so wonderful, just leaving it up to you guys. You guys have been such a huge blessing in helping us maintain this way of life and to offer the things that we do offer so everybody can afford it. Thank you.
So as always, everybody out there,